The unexpected discovery. The garage door screeched a rusty chorus as Dusty forced it upward. The counterweight felt heavier than lead, a stark reminder of his weary bones. Instead of the familiar, comforting aroma of gasoline and dark roast, an oppressive staleness hung in the air. He slapped the light switch, the lone bulb sputtered, throwing grotesque caricatures across the tool-strewn space. That's when he noticed them. Two small shapes huddled near the back wall, nestled amongst stacks of used tires and a greasy tarp. He blinked, wondering if a couple of stray dogs had wandered in. But the gentle rise and fall of their chests spoke of slumber and of children. Girls, by their looks. He creaked down to his knees. They were mirror images, sporting tangled blonde manes that framed angelic, sleeping faces. One gripped a well-loved teddy bear. The other, a dog-eared storybook. He hadn't been this close to kids in ages, not since. Irrelevant now. "Hey!" he murmured, careful not to frighten them. "Hey, sleepyheads!" The girl with the bear blinked awake. Her eyes, the vibrant green of spring foliage, widened as they locked onto Dusty. Recognition bloomed, and a hesitant smile tugged at her lips. "Daddy?" she breathed, her voice thick with sleep. Her twin roused at the sound, mirroring her sister's expression. "Daddy!" she echoed, struggling to sit upright. Dusty flinched, scrambling back until he collided with the frigid steel of his workbench. "Whoa, hold your horses. Daddy? I don't have any daughters." He scanned their identical faces, a prickle of panic crawling up his spine. His trade was engines, not child-rearing. "Yes, you are," the bookish girl insisted, pushing herself to her feet. "You're our daddy, Dusty." Dusty's the name, he conceded, striving for composure. "But I'm not your dad. What are your names? Where's your family?" "I'm Lily," the girl with the teddy confided, hugging the worn toy close. "And I'm Daisy," her sister chirped, taking a step toward him. Lily reached out, her small hand brushing against his calloused one. "You're our daddy. We know it." He recoiled as if stung. No, you've got it wrong. Maybe you mixed up the houses? The garages?" He surveyed his cramped domain, suddenly seeing it through their innocent eyes. It was a pigsty, hardly a suitable spot for kids. A wave of unexpected shame washed over him. Daisy's brow furrowed, her lower lip quivering. "But," the lady said. "What lady?" Dusty pressed, a cold knot forming in his stomach. Lily and Daisy exchanged a glance, a silent dialogue passing between them. "She just mentioned you were our daddy," Lily mumbled, avoiding his gaze. Dusty raked a hand through his greasy hair, his thoughts churning like an unbalanced flywheel. This was madness. Unthinkable. He couldn't have. His past was a sealed vault, buried deep, and he'd spent years convincing himself it was better left undisturbed. Yet these two small girls, with their guileless eyes and unwavering conviction, threatened to crack it open. He crouched again, trying to meet their stares. "All right, Lily, Daisy. Listen carefully. I suspect there's been a misunderstanding. I have no idea who this lady is, but she's mistaken. I am not your father. I'd remember something like that, wouldn't I?" His voice hitched slightly, betraying his own doubt. But the twins merely returned his gaze, their green eyes brimming with quiet, unshakable certainty. And in that instant, a sliver of uncertainty, minute but resilient, began to take root within Dusty. What if they were right? Unanswered questions. The aroma of sizzling bacon permeated the cramped trailer. Dusty watched Lily, her small face etched with focus, expertly turn the rashers. At the table, Daisy, absorbed in her task, spread butter on toast, a melody he didn't recognize drifting from her lips. That they were here, invading his solitude, claiming kinship, felt surreal. He'd surrendered his bed, resigning himself to the spring-worn couch. A swift inventory of the pantry had yielded enough ingredients for a passable breakfast. He observed their eager consumption, tiny faces smeared with breakfast remnants. "More bacon, Dusty?" Daisy's query startled him, her plate extended. Already using his given name, adopting a familiarity he couldn't process. "Sure thing, kiddo," he replied, forcing a smile, his mind a chaotic mess of questions. As the girls occupied themselves after the meal, coloring with long-forgotten crayons, Lily fixed him with a solemn gaze. "Your father possessed a special tool," she announced, her voice small yet distinct. "A wrench. He stored it on the workbench's highest shelf." Dusty's blood turned to ice. His father, how could they possibly know? He hadn't uttered a word about him in years. "What are you talking about?" he managed, his voice tight with apprehension. It was silver, Daisy interjected, still engrossed in her art. And the handle was blue. He used it to repair the carburetor on the old Ford, Lily finished, her eyes locked on Dusty's. A sharp intake of breath. The Ford. The relic his father had perpetually tinkered with before his passing. The decaying monument that still occupied space behind the garage. The wrench, it resonated with a painful truth. He recalled the tool, his father's prized possession. A wave of dizziness threatened to overwhelm him. How could these unfamiliar children possess such intimate knowledge of his past, of his father? He swallowed thickly. My father is gone, he stated, his voice raspy. He passed away long ago. Lily offered a slow nod. We are aware, she whispered. He spoke of you. Of the workshop. The workshop. His father's beloved domain and his own personal torment. He was transported back to the endless hours of apprenticeship, the sting of never measuring up, the constant shadow of disappointment. He had loathed that space, despised the scent of oil and grease, loathed the suffocating silence that amplified the oppressive atmosphere. He hadn't crossed its threshold in years. He believed you were a skilled mechanic, Daisy volunteered, her voice a soft tremor. But that you were sad. Sad. The word hung, a palpable weight in the air. His father had perceived it even in his taciturn way. He'd recognized the melancholy that had enveloped Dusty like a shroud since he'd abandoned the workshop, abandoned his inheritance. Dusty raked a hand through his hair, his thoughts spiraling. He peered at the two small faces gazing back, their eyes a disconcerting blend of anticipation and vulnerability. He remained skeptical of their claims, struggling to accept the notion that they were indeed his daughters. But their knowledge of his father, that was irrefutable. That was a dormant wound reopened, a specter resurrected. A multitude of questions swirled within him, coupled with a growing premonition that he preferred to remain ignorant of the answers. Whispers of the past. Dusty hummed a tuneless melody, wrestling with a stubborn bolt on the antique engine he was restoring. The garage, usually a sanctuary of organized chaos, felt different. A strange current thrummed in the air, prickling the hairs on his arms. He glanced up. A wrench, the one he'd been using just moments ago, lay a good foot away from where he'd placed it, gleaming under the bare bulb. Now, how'd you get over there? He muttered, more to himself than anyone else. He shrugged it off, attributing it to clumsiness and fatigue. But then it happened again. A screwdriver, specifically the Phillips head he needed, clattered to the floor near his feet, apparently dislodged from its magnetic strip on the wall. This time, he felt a definite unease. He looked around, half expecting to see someone playing a prank, but the only other occupants of the garage were Lily and Daisy, perched on upturned buckets, engrossed in what appeared to be engineering. They were tinkering with one of his father's abandoned projects, a complicated device involving gears, vacuum tubes, and wires that sprouted like metallic vines. He'd always considered it a nonsensical mess, one of his father's many flights of fancy. But now one of the gears was slowly turning, almost imperceptibly, and a faint hum resonated from the tubes. Girls, be careful with that, Dusty cautioned, approaching them. That's fragile. Lily looked up, her brow furrowed in concentration. We're just fixing it, she said, her voice unusually low, almost a whisper. Daisy, ever the more practical of the two, pointed to a loose wire. It needs to be reconnected here. Without waiting for Dusty's approval, she expertly crimped the wire with a pair of pliers. Her movements precise and confident. Skills she definitely hadn't learned from him. Dusty stared, dumbfounded. He hadn't taught them anything about electrical wiring. Hell, he barely understood it himself. He turned his attention back to his father's contraption. He'd left it untouched for years, but now, a small light bulb, previously dark, flickered to life. It cast a pale, ethereal glow across the garage, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air. He could have sworn the tangle of wires had rearranged themselves slightly. It's working, he stammered, more a question than a statement. Lily nodded, her eyes gleaming. He wanted it to help people. He? Your father? Dusty asked, his heart hammering against his ribs. They'd never spoken about their father before, not directly. Daisy just stared at the machine, her fingers tracing the outline of a small metal plate. He was clever. Dusty felt a shiver run down his spine. The air grew colder, heavy with a sense of the past. He could almost hear whispers, faint echoes of his own father's voice, lost in the whirring of gears and the crackling of electricity. The garage, once a place of solace, now felt like a haunted museum filled with unfinished legacies and the ghosts of forgotten dreams. He looked at the twins, their faces illuminated by the strange light of his father's machine. The air thickened with the presentiment that he was not alone. Not anymore. Under scrutiny. The rap on the door was sharp, insistent, nothing like Mrs. Gable's gentle offerings of rhubarb pie. Dusty, mid-wrestle with Lily's unruly diaper, nearly launched her into orbit. "Hold your horses," he called, voice tight with effort. He managed to secure the fastener with trembling digits, grabbed a wad of wipes, and scuffed to the entrance, leaving a pale cloud of baby powder marking his path. A woman occupied his porch. Her face, framed by a severe, auburn chignon, was all business. A navy suit, functional and devoid of frills, and a clipboard that looked like it could double as a shield completed the picture. "Dustin Miller?" she asked, her tone clipped and professional. "Ms. Albright, Child Protective Services." Dusty's gut twisted into a cold knot. The possibility hadn't even flickered across his mind. "Come in," he managed, stepping aside to grant her entry. The twins, picking up on his distress, launched into a duet of wails. Albright's gaze, efficient and thorough, swept over the cramped living room, the mismatched collection of threadbare furniture, the precarious tower of engine parts balanced on a repurposed milk crate, the atmosphere of barely contained disarray. He could practically see the judgments forming, catalogued on her mental checklist. So she began, alighting delicately on the edge of the floral armchair, a relic from his grandmother. "You've recently become responsible for 2 small children?" "Well, they showed up," Dusty floundered, searching for adequate explanation. "Claimed I was their father. I'm sorting it out." He gestured vaguely at the screaming infants, now locked in a synchronized symphony of discontent. "It's been a learning curve." Ms. Albright consulted her ever-present clipboard. "And you possess no information regarding their parentage? Nothing to identify them?" Dusty shook his head, defeated. "Zero. Just them. Somehow they knew my name." He wisely omitted any mention of glowing eyes or the unnerving feeling of predestination. That revelation would only invite more complications. Her observation was cool, analytical. "Mr. Miller, do you fully appreciate the seriousness of this situation? These children are defenseless. Our paramount concern is their safety and well-being." Dusty raked a hand through his already disheveled hair, leaving streaks of grease in its wake. "I understand. Truly. I'm trying my best. Feeding, changing, learning their individual quirks." He made a sweeping gesture encompassing the small apartment. "It's not much, granted, but it's all they have." Albright's eyes snagged on the exposed electrical wiring that crisscrossed the wall like errant vines. "This environment, it presents challenges, Mr. Miller. We're concerned about potential hazards. And quite frankly," she added, her voice taking on a softer edge, "we question your capacity to adequately care for 2 infants alone." The words landed like a physical blow, stealing his breath. Doubt, an unwelcome and familiar specter, began to creep in. Perhaps she was right. Maybe he was drowning. I can remedy it," he whispered, his voice thin. "I can improve things. I just require some time." As if attuned to his plummeting spirits, the twins reached out, their tiny hands grasping at him, their cries transforming into desperate little pleas. He scooped them up, one cradled in each arm, feeling their small bodies radiating warmth and trust against him. Albright watched the tableau, her expression an impenetrable mask. "We will be back, Mr. Miller. Expect regular follow-ups. And we anticipate demonstrable improvements." She rose, her navy suit a stark silhouette against the faded roses of the wallpaper. "Furthermore, we'll require you to complete a home study and participate in mandatory parenting classes." As she exited, the weight of his new reality crashed down on him. He gazed at the twins, their guileless faces turned up to his. He had no idea how he would manage it, but he had to prove her wrong. He had to prove he was worthy of their trust. He had to prove he could be the father they believed him to be. The inventor's secret. Dust motes danced in the afternoon sun, slicing through the grimy windows of his father's workshop. Dusty coughed, waving a hand in front of his face. He hadn't ventured in here since the air hung thick with the ghosts of oil, solder, and 1,000 forgotten projects. He told himself he was just tidying, getting rid of junk. But his fingers trembled as he reached for a stack of dusty canvas tarps in the corner. Beneath them, tucked away in a shallow alcove, sat a small, leather-bound journal. Its cover was worn smooth, the spine cracked in several places. He recognized his father's cramped, almost frantic handwriting on the flyleaf, Project Nightingale, Confidential. His heart hammered against his ribs. Nightingale? He didn't remember anything about a project with that name. He flipped it open, the brittle pages rustling like autumn leaves. The first entry was dated almost 20 years ago. Initial energy readings promising. Oscillations, harmonic resonance, potential for cellular genesis. Dusty frowned, his brow furrowed. His father had always been eccentric, a tinkerer obsessed with pushing the boundaries of mechanics, but this was something else entirely. He scanned the pages, his eyes darting over diagrams filled with strange symbols and hand-drawn schematics of complex machinery. Terms like bioluminescence, etheric field manipulation, and artificial womb swam before him. He felt a cold dread creeping up his spine. One entry, dated only a few months before Lily and Daisy appeared, made him stop dead. Breakthrough. Successfully sustained cellular growth independent of organic matrix. Energy source, unstable but viable. Requires careful nurturing. Delicate balance. The words blurred. Could it be? Could his father have created them? He flipped back, searching for any mention of girls, of twins. He found a sketch, a child's drawing, really, of two figures holding hands, bathed in a shimmering light. Below it, a single word, hope. He slammed the journal shut, the sound echoing in the silent workshop. It was insane. Impossible. And yet, the girls' uncanny abilities, their strange lack of memories, the way they seemed to draw energy from the environment, it all clicked into place with horrifying clarity. He ran a hand through his hair, his mind reeling. He needed to understand. He had to know the truth. He opened the journal again, his fingers tracing the faded ink of his father's last entry. The Nightingale Project has yielded unexpected results. I cannot control them. For their own safety, they must be protected. The page ended abruptly, the last few words smudged as if written in haste or perhaps in fear. A threat emerges. The dust devil danced across the cracked asphalt, a miniature tornado mocking the stillness that followed. Dusty squinted, shielding his eyes as a black sedan, sleek and impossibly clean, crunched to a halt beside his sputtering pickup. The engine, a purr rather than a growl, died. Two figures emerged. The first, a woman in a sharp, gray suit, her heels clicking a staccato rhythm against the unforgiving ground. The second, a man, taller, broader, with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. He extended a hand. Dusty, isn't it? Bartholomew Finch. This is Ms. Adler. We're with Omnicorp. The name tasted like ash in Dusty's mouth, though he couldn't place why. He shook Finch's hand, the grip was firm, too firm. Omnicorp? Never heard of you. Dusty wiped grease from his hands with a rag, stalling. Adler spoke, her voice smooth as polished chrome. We've been observing your father's work. Quite impressive. Especially his breakthroughs in temporal mechanics. Dusty's gut clenched. How did they know about that? His father's research, locked away in the back of the garage, was never spoken about. He glanced towards the house, a wave of protectiveness washing over him. The twins were inside, probably drawing on the walls with crayons. He needed to get rid of these people. My dad was just a mechanic, Dusty said, his voice hardening. Fixed cars. That's all. Finch chuckled, a low, insincere sound. Come now, Dusty. We both know that's not true. We're particularly interested in his cranarium project. And, of course, Finch's gaze flickered towards the house, the unique circumstances surrounding your recent family additions. Adler produced a tablet, the screen displaying schematics. Dusty recognized the tangled mess of wires and gears, a diagram of the cranarium. Cold dread bloomed in his chest. This wasn't just curiosity, this was a coordinated effort. We believe, Adler continued, her voice devoid of warmth, that Omnicorp can provide the resources to fully realize your father's vision. And to nurture the potential of the twins. Nurture? Dusty scoffed. You mean exploit? Finch's smile vanished. Let's just say their abilities could be invaluable. To the right people. He took a step closer, invading Dusty's personal space. Think about it, Dusty. We can make you very comfortable. A generous compensation package. All you have to do is cooperate. Dusty stood his ground, the scent of motor oil and sweat clinging to him, a stark contrast to their sterile presence. He knew with a chilling certainty that this wasn't an offer. It was a threat, protecting the future. The rain had stopped, leaving the air thick and smelling of ozone. Looking at Lily and Daisy, asleep and nestled together on the makeshift bed of blankets in the corner of the office, Dusty felt a resolve harden inside him, a sensation akin to molten metal cooling. He wouldn't let whatever corporation was after them touch them. They were his now in a way he couldn't fully explain, a responsibility he accepted without hesitation. He was their protector. He tiptoed around them, careful not to wake them. The greasy smell of the garage clung to everything, a stark contrast to the girl's faint scent of lavender and something else, something almost metallic. He pushed the thought aside. He needed a plan. And to make a plan, he needed to understand what he was dealing with. That meant understanding his father. Dusty ventured into the workshop. It was more chaotic than he remembered. A labyrinth of half-finished projects, discarded tools, and scribbled notes tacked to every available surface. He'd always dismissed it as a mess, his father's eccentric hobby space. Now it felt like a puzzle box waiting to be opened. Lily stirred in her sleep, murmuring something unintelligible. Daisy squeezed her hand, her brow furrowed even in slumber. He ran a hand over a workbench cluttered with circuit boards and wires. His father had always been secretive about his work, muttering about patent applications and proprietary technology. Dusty had assumed it was just harmless tinkering. Now he wasn't so sure. He found a blueprint rolled up and tied with twine. He carefully unfurled it, revealing a complex schematic of what looked like a miniature power generator, labeled with cryptic symbols and equations. At the bottom, in his father's neat hand, was a single word, Ethereum. Ethereum? Dusty frowned. He'd never heard of it. He picked up a nearby wrench, its handle worn smooth from years of use. His father's hands. He remembered him patiently teaching him how to change a tire, the smell of oil and sweat, the quiet pride in his eyes when Dusty finally got it right. Had there been something else, something hidden beneath the grease and the everyday? Daisy woke with a start, her eyes wide and luminous. Dusty? Hey, sleepyhead. Just looking around. He tried to keep his voice light, but he knew she could probably see right through him. Lily yawned and sat up, rubbing her eyes. What's this place? She asked, her gaze sweeping over the cluttered workshop. My dad's playground, Dusty said, forcing a smile. He was a bit of an inventor. He picked up a small, intricately carved wooden box from a shelf. He hadn't noticed it before. It was inlaid with mother-of-pearl and felt strangely warm to the touch. Can we see? Lily asked, her voice filled with curiosity. Dusty hesitated, then nodded. Sure. Let's see what secrets you're. Grandpa hid away. He handed her the box. As her fingers brushed its surface, a faint hum filled the air and the lights in the garage flickered momentarily. Dusty exchanged a look with Daisy. This was just the beginning. Invention's awakening. The van screeched to a halt, dust billowing around Lily and Daisy as they left the bakery. Two men in dark suits, faces grim and identical as stamped coins, spilled out. Girls, come with us. Your father needs to speak with you. The voice was gravel scraping on metal. Lily grabbed Daisy's hand. He's right inside. Isn't he? She said, her voice trembling slightly but laced with defiance. She knew these men weren't here for a polite chat. He sent us, the other man said, stepping closer. His hand twitched towards something hidden under his jacket. Daisy tugged Lily. Run! They bolted. The alley behind the bakery, usually a shortcut, now felt like a labyrinth. They scrambled over overturned bins, the metallic clang echoing in the narrow space. Daisy, surprisingly nimble, led the way, her pigtails bouncing. This way, she hissed, wrenching open a door Lily hadn't even noticed before, its paint peeling like sunburnt skin. It was the back entrance to their father's workshop. The men were close behind, their heavy footsteps thudding on the pavement. Inside, the workshop, usually a sanctuary of gears and grease, was now a chaotic escape route. Lily slammed the door shut, fumbling with the rusty bolt. He won't hurt us, will he? Daisy whispered, her breath coming in ragged gasps. Not if I can help it, Lily said, her eyes darting around the room, searching for anything at all. The door splintered. They had seconds. Lily remembered something their father had shown them weeks ago, a half-finished project tucked away in the back, a device he'd called the harmonic disruptor, intended to scramble radio waves, now gathering dust under a tarp. The back. The corner. They scrambled behind a towering stack of disassembled engines. Lily ripped the tarp off the device. It was a mess of wires, vacuum tubes, and a bizarre antenna shaped like a tuning fork. The men burst into the workshop, their faces contorted with frustration. One of them pulled out a sleek, black device, pointing it towards the girls. You can't hide forever. Lily fumbled with the disruptor. There was a single, unlabeled switch. She closed her eyes, took a breath, and flipped it. A high-pitched whine filled the air, making their teeth ache. The black device in the man's hand sparked and died. The overhead lights flickered, then plunged the workshop into darkness. Outside, car alarms blared, a cacophony of mechanical distress. But something else was happening. The workshop itself seemed to be waking up. A robotic arm, dormant for years, twitched. A self-propelled welding torch sputtered to life, aiming its flame menacingly at the intruders. The inventions their father had tinkered with, cast-offs and almost finished projects, were stirring. The men, disoriented and their technology useless, stumbled back. Fear replaced their practiced menace. This wasn't part of the plan. "Let's go," one shouted, shoving the other towards the door. They didn't wait to be asked twice. The girls stood, panting, surrounded by the awakening creations of their father's mind. The whine of the harmonic disruptor slowly faded, leaving an eerie silence in its wake. Daisy looked at Lily, her eyes wide with a mixture of terror and awe. What just happened? Lily stared at the robotic arm, now slowly rotating, its metallic fingers flexing. "I think," she said, her voice barely a whisper, "I think they just made a big mistake. A new family." The last of the corporate drones scrambled back into their armored vehicles, leaving a trail of scorched earth and shattered dreams. The air still crackled with residual energy, a metallic tang stinging Dusty's nostrils. He watched them disappear over the horizon, a knot of anxiety slowly unwinding in his chest. It was over. For now. He turned back to Lily and Daisy, who were picking themselves up from behind the overturned workbench. Daisy, ever the pragmatist, was already brushing dirt from her overalls. Lily, her face smudged with grease, offered a shaky smile. "Well," she said, her voice hoarse, "that was eventful." Dusty pulled them both into a hug, the twins sandwiched between his worn leather jacket. "We did it," he murmured, the relief washing over him in waves. "We actually did it." That night, huddled around a crackling bonfire in the yard, they talked. Not about corporations or inventions, but about themselves. Dusty told them stories of his father, a brilliant but eccentric inventor who had always dreamed of using his creations to help people. Lily and Daisy shared memories of their nomadic past, of whispered stories and stolen moments of joy in a world that had always been unkind. As the embers glowed low, Dusty looked at the twins, their faces illuminated by the firelight. They weren't just two lost girls he had found. They were his family. A strange, unconventional family, but his nonetheless. "I was thinking," he began hesitantly, "about reopening the workshop. Dad always wanted it to be more than just a place to tinker. He wanted it to be a place where we could build things that mattered." Lily's eyes lit up. "Like, helping people?" Dusty nodded. "Exactly. We could use the inventions to make a difference. Fix things, build things, maybe even invent new things." Daisy, who had been quietly listening, finally spoke. "I'm in," she said, her voice firm. "But no more fighting corporations. I'm tired of running." Dusty grinned. "Me too. This time, we do things our way." The next morning, they set to work. The workshop, long dormant, groaned back to life. Dusty, with Lily and Daisy as his eager apprentices, dusted off old tools, oiled rusty gears, and sorted through the jumbled mess of wires and components. Sunlight streamed through the grimy windows, illuminating the space with a hopeful glow. The first project was simple, a self-watering garden for Mrs. Gable, the elderly woman down the street whose arthritis made it difficult for her to tend her flowers. As they worked, laughing and bickering, Dusty felt a sense of purpose he hadn't known he was missing. He wasn't just fixing machines anymore. He was building something bigger. Something meaningful. He was building a family.